Thank you very much. Well, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. One thing that people have been asking me over the weekend is that why now? Why did you step out behind the avatar and pop your face up your beautiful face up in public? And it kind of relates to what I wanted to get into, which is a video that I did a while ago. I mean, I'm kind of just making this up on the fly, actually. But the what I call the great turning away. I mean, we've had a lot of Spengler this weekend, and unfortunately there's going to be a little bit more now. I'm going to try and keep it down a little bit. I mean, my good lady in my life, she told me when she found out I was going to do this, she said, "Don't wax nostalgic about the 90s. Don't make obscure references to pop culture. Don't talk about how paranoid you are about digital surveillance, and don't prattle on about Oswald Spengler." So with all of that feminine advice dutifully ignored, we can jump straight in here. Back in the 90s, back in 1997, I had the worst job in the world. I had the worst job in the world, and I was driving home one day with my mate, so we worked together, and there was a song came on the radio, on Radio 1, and it seemed so fresh, it seemed so crazy. It was Radiohead's Paranoid Android. And we were aware of Radiohead. There was the Ben's album was out there, and we were like, "This is amazing. This is like prog rock. It's opera. It's ambient. It's out there. It's insane." And we were thinking, it seems so fresh. And this was 1997, so we were thinking, imagine how amazing the music will be in the future. If we're getting this now, imagine how amazing it's going to be in 2015. So much for that. And one of the things that I realized over the years, when you kind of focus in on entropy and the subjects that we've been talking about this weekend, is that when I look back on it now, that wasn't actually the beginning of something, but in my kind of hot take on it, is that Radiohead were ending the form of pop music. It was dead. Because after the 2000, you get the Mark Fisher sort of take, where why is everything ossified? Why is everything stagnant? And he puts at the door of neoliberalism. And I think that there's a sort of progressivism which is embedded in his thinking, which is, of course, false. But from our perspective, if you bring in a Spenglerian perspective, if you bring in entropy, what you find is that a form, in this case pop music, it doesn't have an infinite capacity to deliver wondrous things. And I think what that represented I use Radiohead as the example you could read. I think that's the best one. But really what they were doing was scraping the very last out of the form itself. But they carried on making music after that, into the 2000s. But what I thought was interesting was that it was this sort of minimalist. It was repetitive. And you find it more and more where you'll get a form will die, it's done, it's fulfilled itself, it's over, but it will kind of linger on as a sort of aftershock, as a sort of afterglow of what was. And when we're talking about sort of the Spenglerian view of civilization, that happens there too. And what he would say was that in the late stage of civilization, you begin to see the filtering away. You begin to see the cities emptying out. You begin to see this exhaustion setting in with the mass. They're worn out. They're tired. They're tired of politics. They're tired of Lizzo. They're tired of Donald Trump. They're tired of being told what to do. It's this incessant noise which they have to deal with every day. But there's a funny thing happening, which is sort of what Oron touched on as well, where they don't seem to be, this natural process seems to be blocked. This idea where we would go back to the land, we would try to go back to the land to kind of shut out the chaos and the madness of it all, to just live quietly and organically once again in this aftershock of a dying or a dead form. And you see that all the time now. You see how people are talking about going off grid. And it's as if there is this turning away which is trying to happen, which is trying to manifest itself, but it can't. And the reason why it can't is, why I put it here, technocracy strikes back. So in our analysis of the general situation of what's happening in the West, we analyze the entropy, all of the problems that we're seeing. It's as if almost this it's as if there's another conference hall like this somewhere, and they've drawn the opposite conclusion. They've said, no, they won't wander off back into the wilderness. They will be chipped and they will be surveyed, and we're going to watch them all of the time. And it's as if the exits are being closed. And this is what my kind of paranoia, which is growing by the day, of digital technology and the way you see now it's embedded in the British government. It's active policy, all of this stuff. The climate change stuff. We've been through the COVID saga. I walked through the airport the other day and I was standing there. All I had was the boarding pass, like paper with folds in it. And I was and then everybody else was like the phone, just the phone like that. And the thing is, it isn't all top down. Nobody is forcing them to do that. They're doing it because it's convenient. But more and more of their life is going to be in the phone. And the people who are sitting in the conference room, which is their version of this, they know that. And what we're getting into is a situation where increasingly our kind of ideas and our kind of politics are going to be trapped within this digital surveillance grid. I mean, just to go back to, I'll take the box on the obscure pop cultural reference now. Has anybody here ever played Soul Reaver or the Legacy of Kain games? Back in the day, look at everybody my age putting their hand up. And there was a funny thing with that. That fascinated me, that game, because there wasn't levels in the normal way that we think of a video game. There wasn't actually levels. But what you did was gain abilities. And so what would happen was you'd be walking along and then you'd climb a wall. You'd have the ability to climb. On top of there, you'd find the ability to be able to swim in water. But then you realize that further back in the game, you'd actually seen water. So then you go back on yourself. You've now got the ability to swim. You go in the water. And then when you're there, you find another ability, the ability to go through bars. And so what I begin to realize is that there's a kind of logic to even the most primitive of digital forms, which is a task being accomplished and then access being granted. And it's this over and over and over again. If you play Skyrim, for example, which was mentioned in the previous speech, the idea of Skyrim, it's still gamified. Everything's gamified. You go along, you get the magic sword. The magic sword will allow you to kill this different beast. You get the key from the different beast. It's all about blocking access, carry out the task, and then gaining access to. And what's happening, I think, is that there's something in this technology, the digital technology, which is now beginning to manifest itself in the real world. And this is going to prevent the kind of turning away. It's going to make things very, very difficult for whatever it is. If you want to go back to rejuvenate Christianity, or if you want to find the spark of the pagans and the Bronze Age mindset and all this, increasingly everything is going to be within this. And the reason why I said, well, I'm going to go along to the conference was because originally I was just going to sort of sit in the back and mind my own business and not under a cause of force, but I got bullied into giving a speech. Where is he? There's Mr. Sargon. And so this I view, this keeps me awake at night more than anything else. And it encroaches on just about everything that we do. And it touches also on what Oron said, because we can see that this kind of controlling mechanism, which is expanding seemingly by the hour, it isn't actually entropic itself. It's more like a stabilizing form. And so what we find, I find with the technocrat agenda, is that it is a kind of twisted Faustian form. But there's an element to it where they have recognized the trajectory. It's as if they are also in the game of looking at civilizational cycles. And they have decided, no, we will not. We will not let the hand will not pass 12. And we are going, and this in the end is the ultimate rebellion. It's a rebellion against the cycles itself. Whether or not they can do this, I don't know. But this is kind of like going to be the major block against anything that can, even the populist energy. Everything is going to be having a negotiation with this kind of technology. And I really popped up here. I wanted to come along to say, what is our response to this? What do we do in the face of this sort of gamified world? And I wanted to come along to say, like, is there institutions being built? How do you do it? Because the people who go off grid are actually sort of entropic in relation to the grid, because they undermine its potential and how far it can spread. And it seems to me that we're going to have to deal with this one way or another. What I thought was, in order that we can get to the place, which is what comes after the aftershock, which is this kind of minimalism, where we can begin to clear our heads. And it's from that position that we can begin to reorientate ourselves and look properly to the future. But as it stands now, we're kind of trapped in this labyrinth of Soul Reaver, where you're going to go up and down and left and right. And well, now I'm going to do what they say. I'm going to get my 4 jobs, or I'm going to lower my carbon footprint. And it's going to be gamified. The whole world will be gamified in this way. And the question facing us, regardless of your personal perspective, is what is our relationship to this thing? That's really what I wanted to come along. And I said that what we need is the organization, the institution. So I wouldn't normally dox myself. I didn't want to come out, but I feel the situation is so grave that it kind of warranted it, because eventually some of us are going to start and disappear off the internet. In Britain, for example, the online harms bill is coming through, being rammed through, and you'll see whole sites just being locked. The Paraguay is an option. I kind of get it, but for most of us, I'm told I've got too much baggage, I'm going to be stuck here. And so I recently did an article called Ruminations by a Vegetable Patch. And it was my raised garden that I've created. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is so lovely. And I was constantly looking at it, making excuses to go, oh, there's a weed there. That's a weed there. And I was like, oh, well, I'll check the celery. Celery looks stringy. And it was this deliberate kind of conscious effort but I knew that there was a little bell ringing and it was saying, notifications are piling up there. Who sent you an email? How's this going to go? And I realized then, like, I want to be always at the vegetable patch. And it's a kind of it's a kind of microcosm of the problem that we're facing, where eventually there'll just be no vegetable patch. You'll just be looking at this all the time, all of this digital technology. And so I think as a matter of priority, it's a case of saying, how do we operate outside of this? And this is really why I came along. This is kind of like why I decided to show my face in public. But what I will say is that there was a beautiful sort of, back to the sort of Radiohead kind of hot take on this. There was a song they did called How to Disappear Completely, which came later during the minimalist phase. And if you listen to it, what I find interesting about the using Radiohead as an example is that they were conscious of what they were doing. They knew they were blowing up the structures that made the form where it was. And there was a song called How to Disappear Completely. And in it was a kind of standard, a bit of a repetitive thing. But then everything began to get a little bit sort of warped, and everything began to get a little bit twisted. And it was like all of the structures began to fall in on itself. All of the beats began to melt. And then it just sort of collapsed in on itself in this mushy heap. But then Tom York's falsetto burst through the whole thing. And this is something we see with this kind of, this collapsing structures that you'll see, is that in the minimalist world, you will find, again, like an authentic human voice. A similar kind of thing happened with Beethoven's Ninth, where eventually you can't push the form of classic anymore. He has to go back to actual pure human expression. In the Faustian sense, this is kind of it as well. If you think of the Gregorian chant in the churches, it's like this pure expression of light. And it's as if over the years, what's happened is that we've accumulated all of this kind of baggage, and all of these structures have been put in place. Most of them we did it ourselves. And at the same time, they are becoming kind of clearly visible as control mechanisms, but also they're also beginning to twist and collapse in on themselves. Nobody believes in anything anymore. Basically, whatever, we've got the science, they'll tell you. Everybody knows it's nonsense. And so these are all signs of decay. It's all collapse. It's all entropy on the one hand in intellectual cells. All of the public intellectuals are idiots. Like, none of them are as clever as the people who have been speaking in this room this weekend. And so on the one hand, there's this complete retardation of how we live. But at the same time, what they have been very, very busy with is pouring all of that mental energy into building these control grids. And it seems to me, if we need to get through this, we need to pass through the eye of the needle. It's going to be a conscious effort not to get trapped in the collapsing structures and all of these sort of digital traps, not to be caught as slaves in this gamified system. And instead, out on the sort of minimalist plane, we can once again find a sort of pure, authentic of expression, however that manifests itself. But the first steps, I'm afraid, are going to be people like us in here. I spoke to Sargon the other day. There's a scene on Zulu when the young man turns around and he says to the captain, "Why us? Why are we here?" And he says, why is it us that have got to face off against this? And the captain turns around and he says, "Because we're here, lad. And it's unfortunate and shit that we've got to deal with this, but that is the way it is, I'm afraid." So that's kind of all I had to say. Thank you very much.